Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Door to Shelf. And today I am filming a video about books which I haven't seen mentioned before on YouTube. So hopefully they are lesser known books which will add some new things for people to find, some recommendations people haven't heard before. Yeah, so that's the aim of the game. Today it is pretty gloomy and rainy and cold. Yesterday it was beautiful though. We actually had some sunshine. I was able to get out in the garden. I planted some little shoots that have just come up from bulbs, and we had a load of bark delivered for the garden. So I've in the process of shoveling all the bark on the flower beds, and it was so nice being outside and doing some work. It was really lovely. And it reminded me, like in the first lockdown, how much being out in the garden really saved everybody, I think. And it will be so nice when it's spring and we can go out more in the garden and hopefully generally out more again. So I'm just going to get on with the books. So the first one, I might just add actually, most of these are books I haven't yet read, with a few exceptions. So the first one is one I haven't read. This I heard about on Books on the Nightstand podcast years and years ago. I think, let's have a look. This came out in 2009. That's probably when I got it. And it's called The Gargoyle by Andrew Davidson. So this book, first of all, it's got black pages on the end. Well, black, whatever that's called. So that's cool. But the book is about a guy who is driving and he's distracted by something, and he crashes his car, wakes up in a burns unit, very badly burned, and he's visited by a woman, and the woman says that she knew him before in a previous life. I think he said in medieval Germany, where he was also badly burned. And then she talks about how she was a nun who looked after him, and she's come back to him. And so it's like a sort of a I'm not sure if there's dual timeline or if it's just all talking about the past, but I just thought the concept sounded really interesting, and when I heard it recommended, it was really highly recommended. So that's the first one. The next one is a non-fiction book which I think just sounds different to anything I've read before and really interesting, and it is My Life in Houses by Margaret Forster. So this is a memoir which starts with her birth in 1938 on a council estate, and goes through all the houses that she's lived in up until her final home in London. And she tells her life through the houses, but she also talks about sort of the importance of home and houses, and how they've changed, you know, from when they used to have outside toilets, people used to black their grate, and then now going back to sort of living as single households rather than having like bedsits and lodgings and that kind of thing. So I think this sounds really interesting, and it's just really different, which is really nice. The next one is also one that I've had for a long time, recommended by Books on the Nightstand podcast. Again, I got this I think in 2013, and this is called Defending Jacob by William Landay. So this is a crime book. This is about a man whose job it is to prosecute killers, and a boy at his son Jacob's school gets stabbed to death in the playground, and he's put on the case to try and catch the killer. But there's then a piece of evidence which links his son Jacob to the incident, and everyone starts accusing Jacob of being the murderer. So he basically has to try and defend his son, and they start doubting how well they know him and whether he could have possibly been linked. So it sounds like it's probably going to be like really gripping, and that I'll probably be able to go through this one really quickly. But yeah, I just remember thinking that was a really interesting premise, and I don't know why I haven't read it yet, to be honest. Sport for choice, that's why. The next book I've got is a family classic. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, but it's one that my mum loves, and she's had it for a long time. I think this is published in 1974, and my brother has read it so many times, and he bought me my copy. It's called Cashelmara by Susan Howatch. So this book is a chunkster, and that's probably why I've never read it. But it's basically about a man who is a widower, and he never talks about his wife and who has died, and he never talks about his family home in Ireland. And then he meets a younger American woman who he can talk to about both of these things, and he marries her and takes her back to the family home. And then she realises that the marriage is not what she thought it was going to be, and that she is stuck between two, I think three generations of the family who were divided by love and hate, and it says it moved inexorably towards murder and retribution. So that's interesting. I like the cover as well. I think, so I'm pretty sure one of the prompts, either for Pop Sugar or Reading Women, is to read a book with 3 generations in. And I think there might be one for a map, or it might be a family tree, I can't remember, but there's a map in here as well. So I can probably read it for one of those, which is nice. So the next one is one that I bought for my mum, and I think I just found it and bought it for her, and then she's given it to me after she's read it. And this is a dual timeline book. This is Random Acts of Heroic Love by Danny Scheinmann. This follows a man called Moritz in 1917 who has survived World War I, and he has to cross the Siberian wilderness to try and get back to Lotta, who is his love back home. And then also in 1992, where there's a man called Leo who was in South America in hospital, and his girlfriend has died and he doesn't know how or why. And it's then something links the two, and there's a discovery which links them both. So I don't know what that is, but I just thought it sounded, I liked the cover, and I thought it just sounded really touching, I guess. And hearing about someone surviving the Siberian wilderness just sounds quite intriguing as well. So that's the first pile. Just swap to the next pile. The next one is sort of like a satirical type book, which I've again had for ages, and I just don't know why haven't read it. So it's published in 1967, and I think I saw this on a TV book club that one of the guests had recommended this. And it's Towards the End of Morning by Michael Frayn. So this is set in Fleet Street on a newspaper in the Crosswords and Nature department, and about a man called John Dyson. He dreams wistfully of fame and a gentlemanly life until one day his great chance of glory at last arrives. So I think it's kind of like the old days of writing newspapers, where everyone was kind of like going out for these really alcoholic lunches every day, and everyone was kind of, I don't know, like smoking and writing, and like, I don't know, I just kind of the photo is sort of alludes to that as well. But it's supposed to be really funny. It's quite a short book, and I remember really being enthusiastic to read it when I got it, and I still am. It's just, again, sport for choice. The next one is one which I bought it because I'd heard good things about the author, and when I just read the back before I started filming, I thought, oh, it sounds really sad, but it's got a nice cover again. So this is a modern classic. It's called A Town Like Alice by Nevil Shute. It's about a lady called Jean. She's 20 and she works in Malaya when it gets invaded by Japan. She's captured and joins a group of women and children who the Japanese force to walk for miles through the jungle. Many of them die. And then she takes on the role of leader for the prisoners. She runs into an Australian prisoner called Joe, who helps them steal food and is horrifically punished as a result. Jean's adventure and her bond with Joe form the heart of this gripping and moving story. So that's going to have extra meaning to me because my granddad was captured by the Japanese in the Second World War. So, yeah, but this sounds good, but maybe not the right time to read it now because it sounds pretty sad. The next one is an author who I talk about quite a lot because he is brilliant and funny, and I love his books. This is Belching Out the Devil by Mark Thomas. So Mark Thomas, I've mentioned lots of times, is a political stand-up comedian and journalist and author. He is such a nice guy, and if you ever get a chance to see one of his stand-up shows, go, because they're brilliant. They invariably have a book released at the same time. This one is all about Coca-Cola. So I probably will never drink Coke again after I've read this, because it's all about basically, so I'll just read the blurb. So from Istanbul to Mexico City, Mark travels the globe investigating the stories and people Coca-Cola's iconic advertising campaigns don't mention. Child labourers in the sugarcane fields of El Salvador, Indian workers exposed to toxic chemicals, Colombian union leaders falsely accused of terrorism and jailed alongside the paramilitaries who want to kill them, and many more. Provocative, funny and stirring, Belching Out the Devil investigates the truth behind one of the planet's biggest brands. So yeah, I don't know if there's any, no, there's no photos in here, but I think I've missed the stand-up for this one, which is annoying. But yeah, I know this is going to be entertaining and informative, which is what he always does. Oops. So the next one, I have had it on my shelf for ages. It's published in 1995. I didn't even really know what it was about. I think, again, I saw it recommended on TV Book Club and got it from that. But when I read the back earlier, I thought, oh, this sounds really good. This is Shena Mackay, The Orchard on Fire. So this was shortlisted for the 1996 Booker Prize. So this is about a couple called Percy and Betty, who are in a pub in Streatham, and they change their life to a tea room in Kent, and life for their daughter changes dramatically. So she befriends a girl called Ruby, who is dangerous and wild and has a brutal home life, and a creepy, immaculately dressed Mr. Greenridge who likes to follow her around the village, mingling the innocent and the sinister and laced with tragic and the bizarre. This is a rare evocation of a 1950s childhood. So that sounds good. So yeah, I might read that one quite soon, so I thought that sounded good. It's got really nice, so when you look, do you know that when the font just looks kind of old? I quite like that. Like a typewriter font. Okay, the next one is one that I got sent from the Willoughby Book Club a long time ago, but it sounds really good as well. This is a debut novel. This is called The Folded Earth by Anuradha Roy, and it's got a really beautiful cover. So this is about a lady who lives in the foothills of the Himalayas in a small town, and she's gone there because she's leaving behind a family tragedy. And she abandons her life to the town's peaceful rhythms, but befriends a lovesick peasant girl and her eccentric landlord, who holds valuable secrets from India's past. So it says it's got a romance at its core, and yeah, sounds good. So the Himalayas interest me, so that's cool. The next one is one that I got on the recommendation of some old colleagues that I used to work with, who couldn't believe I'd never read it and said, oh, it's so funny, you have to buy it. It's Graham Greene, Our Man in Havana, so another classic. I guess it's from, the 70s? Oh no, earlier, 1958. There's quite a lot of really old books in this list, which is nice. So this is about a guy called Wormhold, who is a vacuum cleaner salesman in a city where they keep getting a lot of power cuts. And his his daughter is spending all of his money, and he's kind of broke. And he gets offered a job, and all he has to do in return is to carry out a little bit of spying and file a few reports. But then he gets deeper and deeper into it, and it becomes more threatening. But I think it's kind of, again, a satire and amusing. Quite a small book, and again, quite an intriguing book. The next one I just picked up in a second-hand shop, and I'd never heard of it before. I've never seen it since, and I think it might be in translation. I'm not sure. The author's French anyway, but I bought this. I've written in the front. My dad bought it for me at Ickworth in March 2019. So that's sweet. And this is called The Reader on the 627 by Jean-Paul Didierlaurent. So this is about a guy who works at a factory pulping books, and he really hates his job, but every day he rescues books from the pulping machine, and when he's on his train to work, he recites aloud to the rest of the people on the train the book that he's taken. And then he discovers the diary of a woman called Julie, and she feels as lost in the world as he does, and it says that's when his journey truly begins. It looks like it'll be a quick read because they're very short chapters, not small writing, so I think it'll be quite a quick one. The next one's another old one from 1982. This is one I saw. Now I've just come up with I did get this off someone else's YouTube channel actually. So I have seen it on Booktube before, but I've never seen anyone else mention it before. And it's The Wine of Astonishment by Earl Lovelace. So this is set in Trinidad. It's a little book, and it's about a guy who is a boxer called Bolo. And he is quite popular and good looking and tall and strong. And he decides that he's sick of Americans coming into Trinidad and changing things up and taking advantage of the people who live there. And so he decides to take a stand and try and be a political leader. And I think it just gets all a bit more bizarre, and his decisions aren't very good. And I think it sort of changes the community. But I don't think I've ever read anything set in Trinidad, so I was just intrigued to read this and see what it's like. I've then got another old one. This is from 1943. This is another satire about the press, and this is Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. So I read Brideshead Revisited by him 2-3 years ago and really enjoyed it. And so I think this was another TV book club recommendation. This is another about a guy called Lord Copper, who is a news magnate of a paper called the Daily Beast. He gets a dinner party tip from Mrs. Algernon Snitch, and he feels he's hit on just the man to cover a war in Africa. And it's an exuberant comedy, a brilliantly irreverent satire of Fleet Street and its hectic pursuit of hot news. So yeah, there's that one. Then the last one I have is one which it's supposed to be like a classic amongst medics, but I've never read it. So it's this one, The House of God by Samuel Shem. It's supposed to be really funny. I don't know if it's going to be funny to people who aren't in medicine. So it's talking about the House of God. So it's the hierarchy within a hospital. So about a guy called Roy, Rhodes Scholar, thought he hadn't met Hyper Hooper, out to win the most post-mortems of the year, or Molly, the nurse with the crash helmet. He hadn't met any of the Gomez, get out of my emergency room. There are no Hopers who wanted to die but who were worth more alive. The House of God is a wildly and raunchily irreverent novel that teaches you the not-so-gentle arts of healing and tells you what your doctor never wanted you to know. So it's like a kind of a classic, but again, I think it'll be funny if you've worked in hospital, but if you haven't, I don't know. This is from 1979. So I just had a couple more that I've had on Audible. I've got one called A Glitter and Glue by Kelly Corrigan. This is narrated by Kelly Corrigan on Audible. I'd really recommend. Her narration is brilliant. This is a non-fiction. It's a memoir, and it's about kind of mother-daughter relationships, but it's like touching and funny. So I have read this one. So Kelly is she's just kind of finished her time at, I don't know if it's at university or at college. I think it's at college. And she decides to go to Australia backpacking, and she soon runs out of money and knows she needs to get a job. And she gets a job as an au pair, but the two kids that she's looking after, their mums recently died, and so the whole family is in complete disarray. And it's about the relationship she forms as part of her role, and it's also her then reflecting on her relationship with her mother. Her mother is hilarious, like especially how Kelly reads it, because you know that she's kind of impersonating just how her mum is. So I really enjoy this. It's quite a short audiobook. I think it's about 6 hours, but it was well worth a listen, and I would definitely re-listen. I think it's called Glitter and Glue because her mum says your father's the glitter and I'm the glue in the family. It's really good. And then the next one is called Innocent Traitor by Alison Weir. So this was another Audible, which I really loved. And this is the sort of historical telling of Lady Jane Grey, who, I won't say the big spoiler in case you don't know what happens, but it's her story basically from when she was born throughout her whole life. And it was it's such an interesting period of time, but it's just how it's told, and there's so much like deceit and treachery and backstabbing, and everyone wants to be in the king's favour, and everybody wants their piece of land and their title, and it's really, really good novel, and you learn something about history as well. And then the last one I want to talk about is one I have mentioned before. It was my book of the year a couple of years ago, I think now, and it's Mariana by Susanna Kearsley. So this is about a lady who is driving with her family as a child on holiday, and she sees a house and it just looks really familiar to her, and her family are like, no, we've never been to that house before. And then when she's an adult, she finds the house for sale, and it basically, like, she moves into the house and she starts time travelling. So she starts going back to the house when I think it's probably about 600 years before, when she is a girl called Mariana, and in her past life she lived in that house as Mariana. And she is so she is like I think Outlander's a bit like this, but I haven't ever read Outlander, but I want to. So there's like characters, she's trying to work out if any of her friends in the present day are potentially people that she lived with before. And it's just like again, the narrator does such a great job. I'd really recommend it on Audible. But I just really loved the kind of historical, the dual timeline. There's some romance, and there's like friendship. It's really cozy as well, and I just really loved that book. So yeah, so that's my list of books that I have never heard other people talk about on Booktube. If you're interested in reading any of them, or you have read any of them, then let me know. If you've got some hidden gems that you would like to recommend to me, that would also be cool. And if you just have anything nice to say, then send me a comment, because I love chatting with everybody. I hope that everybody has a nice week. It's supposed to be really cold here for the rest of the week, and wet. But I hope everyone has a nice week, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!